The scene opens with a montage of letters being delivered across different parts of England. Each letter is marked with a golden wax seal, bearing the initials MR. The recipients ordinary people, with seemingly no connection to each author open the letters with curiosity, only to find an enigmatic invitation. You are invited to the Heartwood estate for an exclusive gathering. A mystery lies within one that only the worthy can solve. Come prepared for the unexpected, Mr. R. Cut to the Heartwood estate, a sprawling manor in the English countryside, surrounded by misty gardens and towering oaks. As the guests arrive, the air is thick with anticipation. Each guest is greeted by a butler who directs them to the grand parlor, where a fire crackles warmly. The room is filled with oddities, antique clocks, old portraits, and a curious glass display case holding a first edition of the Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Then, the figure of Mr. R. emerges, a tall, shadowy man with a voice that commands attention. Introduction. A mysterious invitation. The story begins on a misty autumn evening, the kind where the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth, and the distant hoot of an owl echoes through the countryside. The grand estate, known as Blackwood Hall, looms atop a hill, its silhouette cutting a foreboding figure against the twilight sky. Ivy climbs its stone walls, and its tall, narrow windows glow faintly, like watchful eyes observing the approaching guests. Each arrival is marked by the crunch of gravel underfoot, the uneasy rustle of coats, and the hesitant creak of the massive oak doors swinging open. Inside, the hall is a paradox of opulence and decay. Chandeliers glimmer with a golden glow, casting flickering shadows on walls adorned with portraits of long-dead ancestors. The faint aroma of aged wood and distant fires fills the air, adding to the sense of timelessness. Despite its grandeur, there is a disquieting emptiness, as if the house itself holds its breath in anticipation. The guests arrive one by one, each clutching a beautifully embossed envelope bearing no return address. The message inside is enigmatic, its words carefully chosen to intrigue and unnerve. You are cordially invited to an evening of discovery and revelation. Your connection to the great Agatha Christie has not gone unnoticed. Join us at Blackwood Hall to uncover the secrets that lie within. What awaits you will change your life if you dare to see it through. Among the invitees are a diverse group of individuals, each seemingly ordinary, yet cloaked in an air of mystery. Here is Evelyn Marsh, a reserved librarian with a penchant for Christie novels. Victor Haynes, a brash journalist known for his scathing critiques. Margaret Colby, a retired actress who once played Miss Marple on stage. And Simon Fletcher, a quiet yet observant young man whose motives remain ambiguous. Each of them has a story, a reason for accepting the invitation, but none are willing to share. They are greeted by a single servant, an older woman with a face like carved stone, who leads them silently to the drawing room. The room is as imposing as the rest of the house, dominated by a massive fireplace that crackles with life, and a long table set with decanters of wine and crystal goblets. Yet, despite the warm glow, an undercurrent of unease runs through the room, sharpened by the lack of any visible host. Just as the guests begin to exchange wary glances, the clock on the mantel strikes 7, its chime resonating through the house like a bell tolling in the dead of night. The lights dim briefly, and a hidden gramophone crackles to life. A voice, smooth and deliberate, fills the room. It belongs to their mysterious host, Mr. R. The scene opens with a montage of letters being delivered across different parts of England. Each letter is marked with a golden wax seal, bearing the initials MR. The recipients ordinary people, with seemingly no connection to each author open the letters with curiosity, only to find an enigmatic invitation. You are invited to the Heartwood estate for an exclusive gathering. A mystery lies within one that only the worthy can solve. Come prepared for the unexpected, Mr. R. Cut to the Heartwood estate, a sprawling manor in the English countryside, surrounded by misty gardens and towering oaks. As the guests arrive, the air is thick with anticipation. Each guest is greeted by a butler who directs them to the grand parlor, where a fire crackles warmly. The room is filled with oddities, antique clocks, old portraits, and a curious glass display case holding a first edition of the Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Then, the figure of Mr. R. emerges, a tall, shadowy man with a voice that commands attention. Introduction. A mysterious invitation. The story begins on a misty autumn evening, the kind where the air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth, and the distant hoot of an owl echoes through the countryside. The grand estate, known as Blackwood Hall, looms atop a hill, its silhouette cutting a foreboding figure against the twilight sky. Ivy climbs its stone walls, and its tall, narrow windows glow faintly, like watchful eyes observing the approaching guests. Each arrival is marked by the crunch of gravel underfoot, the uneasy rustle of coats, and the hesitant creak of the massive oak door swinging open. Inside, the hall is a paradox of opulence and decay. Chandeliers glimmer with a golden glow, casting flickering shadows on walls adorned with portraits of long-dead ancestors. The faint aroma of aged wood and distant fires fills the air, adding to the sense of timelessness. Despite its grandeur, there is a disquieting emptiness, as if the house itself holds its breath in anticipation. The guests arrive one by one, each clutching a beautifully embossed envelope bearing no return address. The message inside is enigmatic, its words carefully chosen to intrigue and unnerve. You are cordially invited to an evening of discovery and revelation. Your connection to the great Agatha Christie has not gone unnoticed. Join us at Blackwood Hall to uncover the secrets that lie within. What awaits you will change your life if you dare to see it through. Among the invitees are a diverse group of individuals, each seemingly ordinary, yet cloaked in an air of mystery. Here is Evelyn Marsh, a reserved librarian with a penchant for Christie novels. Victor Haynes, a brash journalist known for his scathing critiques. Margaret Colby, a retired actress who once played Miss Marple on stage, and Simon Fletcher, a quiet yet observant young man whose motives remain ambiguous. Each of them has a story, a reason for accepting the invitation, but none are willing to share. They are greeted by a single servant, an older woman with a face like carved stone, who leads them silently to the drawing room. The room is as imposing as the rest of the house, dominated by a massive fireplace that crackles with life, and a long table set with decanters of wine and crystal goblets. Yet, despite the warm glow, an undercurrent of unease runs through the room, sharpened by the lack of any visible host. Just as the guests begin to exchange wary glances, the clock on the mantel strikes 7, its chime resonating through the house like a bell tolling in the dead of night. The lights dim briefly, and a hidden gramophone crackles to life. A voice, smooth and deliberate, fills the room. It belongs to their mysterious host, Mr. R. Blade cutting through their masks. The first clash came as Evelyn and Victor's paths crossed in the study. A heated argument erupted over a single clue, their voices echoing through the empty halls. Margaret, overhearing the commotion, seized the opportunity to slip away unnoticed. In the shadows, Simon watched, a faint smile playing on his lips. By the time the hour struck midnight, the contestants' motives had begun to surface, layer by layer. Some were here for the thrill of the challenge, others driven by greed or ambition. But one hidden among them harbored a darker purpose, their every move a calculated step in a sinister plan. As the guests reconvened in the drawing room, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The parchment scroll lay untouched on the table, a single candle burning low beside it. Mr. R's voice returned, this time colder, sharper. "Congratulations, my guests. You have taken your first steps into the labyrinth. But beware, the deeper you go, the harder it will be to discern friend from foe. Remember, the manuscript is not the only secret this house holds." The candle flickered, then snuffed out entirely, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps and murmurs filled the void, But when the lights flickered back on, one thing was clear. Someone among them was missing. The contest had truly begun, and the night shadows promised to reveal far more than any of them could have anticipated. The first disappearance. The chill of the night had deepened, the wind howling through the cracks in Blackwood Hall, making the old mansion groan like a restless giant. The guests, now scattered throughout the estate in their pursuit of the manuscript, were each consumed by their search. Yet, an unspoken unease had begun to seep into their minds, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. The first sign of trouble came subtly. Margaret Colby, still lingering in the portrait gallery, noticed something amiss. The faint echo of footsteps that had accompanied her search earlier was gone. A cold realization crept over her. She was alone. Her fingers tightened around the clue in her hand as she hurriedly left the gallery, her heels clicking against the marble floor with a sound that felt too loud, too exposed. Meanwhile, in the library, Evelyn Marsh flipped frantically through the pages of an encyclopedia on poisons, her hands trembling. She'd been so engrossed that she hadn't noticed the silence enveloping the mansion. Only when the faint sound of shattering glass pierced the stillness did she freeze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She turned toward the doorway, her breath shallow, but the hallway beyond remained ominously empty. The discovery came an hour later when the guests were summoned back to the drawing room by the old servant's sharp chime of a bell. One by one they entered, their faces marked by confusion and wariness. But as they counted their number, the unease solidified into dread. "Where is Victor?" Margaret's voice cut through the tense silence. Her question hung in the air, unanswered, as the remaining guests exchanged anxious glances. The servant stepped forward, her face as impassive as ever. In her gloved hand, she held a single sheet of paper. "This was found in the conservatory," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Evelyn took the page, her eyes widening as she recognized the excerpt. "I've always thought it best to trust no one until you are certain of their motives. It's from the Murder of Roger Ackroyd," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "One of Christie's greatest twists. But why would this be left behind?" Simon Fletcher leaned forward, his sharp eyes scanning the page. "It's not just a clue," he said, his tone edged with suspicion. "It's a message. Whoever left this wants us to know they're watching." The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, each guest turning on the other in a desperate attempt to deflect suspicion. Margaret's voice rose above the din, her theatrical flair giving her words an almost operatic quality. "How do we know one of you didn't do something to Victor? He was insufferable." "Yes, but murder?" "Murder?" Evelyn repeated, her voice cracking. "How can you even say that? We don't know he's—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Simon remained silent, his gaze darting between the other guests, his mind working furiously. Finally he stood, his commanding presence silencing the room. "Listen to yourselves," he said. "This is exactly what the game, if we can still call it, that was designed to do. Divide us, distract us. If Victor is truly gone, we're wasting time pointing fingers." The calm logic of his words did little to soothe the growing paranoia. As the group debated their next steps, the old servant moved quietly to the fireplace, where a fresh fire crackled. She adjusted a poker, her movements almost ritualistic, before speaking again. "Mr. R. anticipated your mistrust," she said, her tone sharp. "He left instructions should something like this occur. You are to continue the search. The next clue awaits in the East Wing." The East Wing. The words sent a shiver through the group. They had all instinctively avoided that part of the house, its darkened corridors and sealed-off rooms emanating an aura of foreboding. Reluctantly, they agreed to proceed. As they moved toward the East Wing, the once grand and inviting halls of Blackwood Hall seemed to close in around them. The portraits on the walls appeared more sinister, their painted eyes following the guests as they passed. The flickering sconces cast shadows that danced like specters, adding to the oppressive atmosphere. When they reached the door to the East Wing, Simon pushed it open, revealing a corridor swallowed in darkness. The faint scent of decay wafted out, making Evelyn gag and Margaret clutch her pearls. A single lantern hung on the wall, its dim light barely penetrating the gloom. "Stay close," Simon instructed, his voice low but firm. As they ventured deeper into the wing, the group's collective fear grew palpable. The sound of their footsteps echoed unnervingly, and every creak of the floorboards made them jump. Somewhere in the darkness, the truth awaited, but so, perhaps, did the same fate that had befallen Victor. The scene ended with a faint sound, a whisper, or perhaps a laugh echoing from the darkness ahead. The guests froze, their breath caught in their throats. Whatever lay ahead, they had no choice but to face it. And somewhere, unseen, someone was watching. By the time the group reconvened in the drawing room, the tension was palpable. Each person had uncovered a piece of their past, their secrets laid bare by the night's events. Evelyn avoided Margaret's accusatory gaze. Simon's usual confidence was tinged with unease. Margaret's composure had cracked, her theatrical charm replaced by raw nerves. And then, there was the final revelation. The next clue had been hidden in the dining room, inside a hollowed-out candlestick. It was another page from an Agatha Christie novel, this time from "And Then There Were None." The message, scrawled in red ink, read, "One by one, they fell." The implications were clear, and the group's fear escalated. "This isn't a game anymore," Simon said, his voice low and grim. "Whoever brought us here is toying with us. They know everything about us." "But why?" Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. "What do they want?" No one had an answer. The only certainty was that the game had taken a deadly turn. As the clock struck midnight, the mansion seemed to groan, its walls closing in on the desperate group. Somewhere, in the dark recesses of Blackwood Hall, the truth waited to be uncovered, but at what cost? The group split again, their mutual distrust driving them apart, and as the night wore on, the shadows of the estate seemed to grow darker, more alive, whispering secrets of their own. Betrayals loomed on the horizon, and the mansion's deadly game was far from over. The twist, the true culprit. The night seemed endless, the storm outside echoing the chaos within Blackwood Hall. The remaining guests, weary and frayed, gathered in the main hall at the summons of Mr. R. A heavy silence fell as the grand clock struck 2, its chimes reverberating ominously through the cavernous space. The flickering light from the candelabras cast long, sinister shadows on the walls, making the faces around the room appear ghostly and pale. At the far end of the hall, the double doors creaked open. Mr. R. emerged, his presence as enigmatic as ever, cloaked in a long dark coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He walked slowly to the center of the room, his footsteps measured and deliberate, the sound amplified by the tension. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice cut through the stillness, calm yet chilling. "The time has come to reveal the truth." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, suspicion and fear etched on their faces. Mr. R. extended a gloved hand, holding an old leather-bound notebook. "This," he said, "is the missing piece to a puzzle that has haunted me for decades. A mystery unsolved. A crime forgotten by most, but not by me. It's time for justice." Margaret's sharp voice broke the spell. "What are you talking about? What does any of this have to do with us?" Mr. R.'s head tilted slightly, his expression unreadable. "Each of you," he began, "has a connection to Agatha Christie's stories. But more than that, you have a connection to my story, to her story." He opened the notebook, revealing its contents to the group. Pages of notes, clippings, and photographs. In the center was a photograph of a young woman, her features strikingly familiar. "My sister," Mr. R. said, his voice softening for the first time. "She disappeared 40 years ago, under circumstances that mirrored the plot of The Hollow. Her case was dismissed as a tragic accident, but I knew the truth. Someone took her from me, using the very fiction that Christie perfected as their blueprint. The room erupted in whispers. Evelyn's voice quivered as she asked, "And you think one of us is responsible?" Mr. R's gaze was piercing. "Not directly. But one of you holds the key to uncovering what happened. The manuscript contains the final clue. Agatha Christie herself knew something. Her story was based on reality." Simon stepped forward, his face pale but resolute. "This is madness. You've orchestrated this entire night to get revenge for something that happened decades ago?" Mr. R turned to him, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Not revenge, Mr. Hargrove. Closure." The tension reached a boiling point as Mr. R revealed the final riddle, a cryptic passage from the manuscript itself. "Solve this, and you'll find the answer I've been seeking. Fail, and the secrets of this night will be buried with you." The group's desperation was palpable. Evelyn and Margaret argued over the meaning of the passage, while Simon frantically scribbled notes, piecing together fragments of Christie's works. The riddle seemed to allude to a hidden location within the estate, tied to the theme of betrayal and murder on the Orient Express. Just as the tension reached its peak, Evelyn's eyes widened in realization. "It's the greenhouse," she exclaimed. "That's where Christie's characters always uncovered the truth." They raced to the greenhouse, Mr. R following close behind. Inside, among the overgrown plants and shattered glass, they found a hidden compartment in the floor. Simon pried it open to reveal a small box containing a letter and an ornate locket. The letter, written in Christie's elegant hand, detailed an encounter with a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Mr. R's sister. It hinted at a scandal involving a powerful family, a secret Christie had been sworn to protect. Mr. R's composure cracked. He sank to his knees, clutching the locket as tears streamed down his face. "She was silenced," he whispered, "all for their reputation." Simon stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "You've had your answers, Mr. R, but you put us all in danger for this. It ends now." Mr. R looked up at him, the fire in his eyes dimmed. He nodded slowly. "Yes, it ends." As the group returned to the main hall, the storm outside began to subside. The manuscript, now revealed, was safe. The truth, though painful, had come to light, and Mr. R, his purpose fulfilled, surrendered himself to the authorities. But as the group prepared to leave Blackwood Hall, Simon paused at the door. "Do you think this is really over?" he asked quietly. Evelyn glanced back at the estate, its dark silhouette stark against the night sky. "With Agatha Christie," she said, "it's never truly over." The door creaked shut behind them, leaving Blackwood Hall and its secrets to the shadows once more. Resolution, the final truth. The dawn broke over Blackwood Hall, the first rays of sunlight slicing through the dissipating storm clouds. The estate, once shrouded in foreboding darkness, now seemed almost serene, its secrets finally laid bare. The guests, exhausted and shaken, gathered in the drawing room, their eyes heavy with the weight of the night's revelations. Inspector Hughes, summoned by a frantic call from Simon in the early hours, stood before the group, his notebook in hand. Mr. R sat silently in a chair by the fireplace, his shoulders slumped, the locket he had clung to during the night now resting on the table before him. The enigmatic air that had surrounded him was gone, replaced by a fragile humanity. "So it's true then," Hughes said, his voice measured. "You orchestrated all of this to uncover the truth about your sister, but in doing so, you endangered lives, including your own." Mr. R looked up, his face pale but resolute. "I did what I had to do, for her, for the truth. If that makes me guilty, then so be it." The inspector's gaze swept over the group. "And the rest of you? What's your connection to this?" Margaret stepped forward, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "We were pawns in his game, but in a way, we were all connected through Agatha Christie, her stories, and the lives they touched. He used that connection to bring us here." Simon cleared his throat, holding up the manuscript they had uncovered in the greenhouse. And this is what it was all about. A lost Christie short story, a piece of literary history that held the key to solving Mr. R's mystery. Inspector Hughes took the manuscript, his expression unreadable. This will need to be authenticated, of course, but from what I can see, it's genuine. A priceless artifact. He turned to Mr. R. You may have uncovered the truth, but the methods you used, they'll have consequences. Mr. R nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. I accept that. All I wanted was for her story to be told. As the police escorted Mr. R out of the estate, the remaining guests lingered in the drawing room, an uneasy silence settling over them. Evelyn was the first to speak, her tone reflective. It's strange, isn't it? How fiction and reality can blur so easily. We came here because of a story, and now we're part of one ourselves. Margaret gave a wry smile. Let's just hope it doesn't end up as one of those unsolved mysteries. Simon chuckled softly, but his expression quickly turned serious. Do you think we'll ever know the whole truth? About what happened to his sister? About the secrets Christie might have kept? Evelyn shrugged. Maybe not. But sometimes the truth isn't about knowing every detail. It's about finding peace with what we do know. As they prepared to leave, Simon lingered in the hallway, gazing at a portrait of Agatha Christie that hung by the staircase. Her enigmatic smile seemed to hold 1,000 secrets, her eyes twinkling as if she were in on a private joke. Evelyn joined him, her coat draped over her arm. Ready? She asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, but I can't help feeling like tea here is more to this. Like the manuscript's just one piece of a larger puzzle. She smiled faintly. That's the beauty of her stories, isn't it? They always leave you wanting more. They stepped out into the crisp morning air, the estate looming behind them like a relic of a bygone era. The road ahead stretched into the horizon, and with it, the promise of new beginnings. As the car pulled away, Simon glanced back one last time. The estate was bathed in sunlight now, but shadows still clung to its edges, a reminder of the mysteries it had held and the ones it still kept. The lost Christie short story would go on to capture the world's imagination, a testament to her enduring legacy. But for those who had lived through the night at Blackwood Hall, it was more than a piece of literature. It was a symbol of truth, justice, and the enduring power of stories to uncover the secrets of the human heart. The thin line between fiction and reality, the story explores how easily the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined can blur, especially when a hidden manuscript based on a fictional mystery is at the center. As characters delve deeper into the puzzle, they begin to mirror the behavior and psychology of the fictional figures in the story, questioning whether they are shaping their own destinies or simply playing out the roles assigned to them by the narrative. The idea that fiction influences reality and vice versa examined, leaving characters and readers alike wondering if they have control over their actions or if they are merely pawns in a greater story. How art and legacy shape lives. Art, in this case, is more than just the written word. It's an enduring legacy, shaping the fates of those who interact with it. The discovery of Agatha Christie's manuscript becomes a symbol of both inspiration and burden. The characters who come into contact with it are forever altered. Some are consumed by their desire to understand it, while others feel its weight, both as a tool for understanding the past and a reminder of the elusive nature of truth. Christie's legacy itself is a powerful force in the lives of the characters, leaving behind not only a treasure of stories but also a legacy of unresolved mysteries that continue to haunt those who dare to uncover them. The danger of obsession and revenge. As the plot unfolds, it becomes clear that the search for answers in the Christie manuscript is not just an intellectual pursuit, but also a dangerous obsession. The drive to unlock its secrets leads to a dark path, where the characters' desires begin to consume them. Revenge, too, plays a key role, as old wounds are reopened, and past grievances fuel a thirst for retribution. The quest for vengeance blinds the characters to their own motivations, turning their actions into a destructive force that threatens not only their lives, but the lives of those around them. In the end, the story asks whether the pursuit of justice is worth the cost, or if obsession and revenge can forever alter the course of history. These intertwined themes serve to deepen the mystery and drive the suspense, making Shadows of Suspicion not just a tale of whodunit, but a reflection on the complexities of human nature, the allure of the unknown, and the consequences of living in the shadow of a legacy.